Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Celtics escape Game 1 with a win thanks to some sloppy Pacers play late. Also, the Wolves enter the Western Conference Finals with a ton of momentum. And the Cavaliers should trade Donovan Mitchell.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
There was the moment late in the fourth quarter of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals that had to have Celtics fans going, we've seen this movie before. Jason Tatum forced three. Jaylen Brown forced three. Neither went in as they're trying to furiously come back. And then both of those guys went absolutely off at the end of this game. And in overtime, the Celtics rally past the Indiana Pacers 133-128. John Corrales on the court in Boston after the game from Locked On Celtics. And John, as I mentioned, there were some things that were painfully familiar about this game. And yet the Celtics found a way to win.
Yeah, look, we'll just say thank you to the Indiana Pacers for a couple of late turnovers, including being unable to inbound the ball with 10 seconds left. And look, there's two sides to that, right? You're supposed to be able to inbound the ball, and also Jaylen Brown makes a great defensive play, and then he hits the shot. He has to hit that shot in the corner with Siakam all over him. Borderline, 4-point play there. He has to hit that shot. And so, yes, the Celtics got a couple of gifts and they took full advantage of them. And a finals run is littered with good luck. And that's, you can't ever apologize for taking advantage of the good luck. And the Celtics, as bad as they looked down the stretch in the fourth quarter, they got the job done in the overtime. Tatum with 10 points in the overtime. Jaylen making some great defensive plays. And look, Tatum looked bad. He looked bad. The stories about him were going to be rough if that game ended in regulation. And now you get he shook off a bad performance to come through in the clutch. So, the winners get to write history.
Well, one of the reasons that they won this game, one of the big reasons, Jrue Holiday came through offensively in a way that we just hadn't seen so far in this postseason. 28 points on 10 of 16 shooting. He also had the huge stop late on Tyrese Halliburton, where Halliburton just dribbles it off his own hand, trying to get around Jrue. What was different about this that you saw from Jrue?
Well, literally right before we got here, Jrue had his post-game availability. I asked him how he felt after playing more than 48 minutes in this game. He said, we had a lot of time off, so I feel good. And the Celtics are benefiting from being able to close out those prior two or three series in early fashion. So getting the 5 days off, you're allowed to kind of play a guy like Holiday the 48 minutes, and he comes through with just attacking the basket. The Pacers will give up shots at the basket, and he'll get down there and finish those. He'll post up matchups, so it's not always about Tatum and Brown. Jrue can get down there defensively and post up and take advantage of the matchups. And then obviously defensively, he just got named to the all-defensive team. That's why the Celtics got him. And it's a level of poise and execution that comes from being a champ and having 5 days to get your legs under you and take advantage of a game one overtime where the Pacers just came off a 7-game series. And let's not discount the fact that they were just in New York. They played a tough 7-game series. They come here and this is probably why they start to fall apart a little bit down the stretch. Is just they don't have the legs. They don't have that mental sharpness that the Celtics have.
Yeah, some of the biggest plays in postseason history defensively, especially over the last 5 years, Jrue Holiday. We remember some of those plays in the finals, the steal and the alley-oop to Giannis. That was a pretty fun one as well. Lastly here, you and I feel like every time we do these, we have to talk about shooting variance. And we don't really have to do that today, John, because neither one of these teams decided to just shoot like 20 for 40 in a game like this where they're not usually shooting well, but the Pacers did shoot over 53% in this game, and the Celtics didn't make threes. Which one of those is more encouraging for these two teams? Because the Celtics won without doing it, but the Pacers lost despite the fact that they got a lot of the shots that they wanted.
I'm going to say it's more encouraging for Boston because this is exactly what I expect the Pacers to do. And so I don't think that the Pacers have significantly better offensive execution in them. I mean, they put up 128 points. I know they went into overtime, but they still put up 128 points. So they might execute differently. It might look different. Miles Turner had a huge first half. Maybe he scores more or less. I don't know how it's going to go in game 2, but 128 points out of the Pacers is what I expect. What the Celtics need to do is they need to hit some of the shots that they got that are makeable. They had multiple leads, 10, 12, 13-point leads, where they kind of, I don't want to say relaxed, but they got away from that offensive execution that got them those leads. The Pacers are going to score. They're going to make those runs. But if the Celtics execute better offensively, then maybe they minimize those runs and the Pacers don't get it all the way to tied or take a lead. Maybe they just cut the leads down to 5 or 6, and then the Celtics can push that lead again with their next run. So that's where the Celtics can improve, is that better offensive execution, not hunting the isolations, and just being more crisp. It's a test of their discipline, but they got to do it for 48 minutes.
Stay up to date on the Boston Celtics all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Celtics on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, the Wolves have all the momentum coming into the Western Conference Finals. But first, we have our first name, image, and likeness lawsuit. It's winner take all in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Unlike the Eastern Conference Final, the matchup of the Wolves and the Mavericks is seen as much closer. FanDuel likes the Wolves to advance to the finals, but minus 168. If you want to take the Mavs, FanDuel has their odds at plus 142. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. A former top quarterback recruit is suing the University of Florida and football coach Billy Napier for not paying on a name, image, and likeness deal. Jaden Rashada is claiming he was defrauded of millions of dollars in NIL money. He reportedly committed to Florida as their NIL deal beat out what was offered from Miami. He signed his national letter of intent during the December signing period. However, he didn't enroll at Florida, and his arrival in Gainesville was contingent on a 4-year, $13.85 million NIL deal. This is the first known lawsuit of a player alleging a school did not pay on an NIL deal. You can bet it will not be the last. Over on the diamond, Ranger Suarez continues to deal as the Phillies beat the Rangers.
Ranger Suarez, 9 wins on the season, 136 now, technically, ERA on the year, and incredible numbers to boot. Ranger Suarez, obviously, the #1 choice. And looking at what he was able to do for this ball club tonight, I still can't believe it, because you go through the first 3 innings tonight, and Ranger Suarez was in trouble. Ranger Suarez was not locating his pitches. And credit to the Texas Rangers, they were very well disciplined at the plate, and they worked long at bats in the first 3 innings of this ball game. They worked long at bats to the point of 59 pitches being thrown by Ranger Suarez in the first, second, and third innings. How he only threw 108 pitches and got you 7 innings after 59 pitches through innings 1, 2, and 3 is incredible.
The Cleveland Guardians overcame some sketchy pitching to beat the New York Mets.
Another day, another Guardians win. This time it was the offense that had to carry the Guardians, and they keep finding different ways to win games. The bullpen didn't have the kind of game you liked. They gave up 4 of the 6 runs to the Mets. Xavier Curry was good for 4 innings, came in the 5th, and things kind of fell apart for him. The bullpen held it together as long as they could. David Fry, a huge 2-run homer off the bench, off another lefty. I don't understand why managers keep bringing lefties in at the points in the game they do, whether he's starting hitting behind Josh Naylor, whether he's on the bench and Stephen Vogt can bring him in any situation. If he's on the bench, I'm bringing a lefty in as another manager. I just wouldn't, because I know Fry's there lurking. It's a bad choice. I'd rather pick somebody else in the lineup to do that too. Jose Ramirez, a ridiculous 2-run home run as well. That was huge. The Guardians are 32-17. If they play one game under 500 the rest of the way from here, they would still finish with 88 wins. Not sure anybody predicted that with the way things have gone so far with injuries, and just the offense has been kind of but more to come on Locked On Guardians.
And the Cincinnati Reds lineup goes as Elly De La Cruz goes. He had a multi-hit night, and the Reds beat the San Diego Padres.
The Cincinnati Reds stopped the skid at 3 thanks to Andrew Abbott and Elly De La Cruz. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast. And the Cincinnati Reds got beautiful pitching from Andrew Abbott on Tuesday night as the Reds were able to shut out the San Diego Padres. 7 innings, only had 2 strikeouts, but he limited the base runners. Very good overall night for Andrew Abbott. Very little stress on the mound for him. Plus, Fernando Cruz and Alexis Diaz came in, kept the scoreboards clean. That's all I care about. You can talk about strikeouts, you can talk about walks, all this other stuff. Keep that scoreboard clean. That's exactly what they did. Elly De La Cruz, 2-hit night, had a 2-out RBI, scored a run. As Elly goes, so does the Reds lineup. That's been the case all season long. It continued tonight. 2 runs, that's all I needed. Let's see if they can take the series tomorrow.
And the West Finals played out just as everyone predicted. It's the Timberwolves and the Mavericks. Anthony Edwards against Luka Doncic, or at least that is how it's going to be billed. Ben Beacon from Locked On Timberwolves joins me now. And Ben, I know it's not just Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic. This isn't just one-on-one for a trip to go to the finals. So what else should people be looking for? What is the key to this series?
Yeah, well, I think most likely, I mean, obviously those are the superstars. That is going to be what we see on the graphics on TV. Very likely Anthony Edwards is going to guard Kyrie Irving primarily, and Luka Doncic is going to have to go against Jaden McDaniels, who on Tuesday was named to the All-NBA defensive second team. I think the number one thing that Wolves fans will be looking for is, or I guess anybody should really be looking for, is after the Wolves swarmed Jamal Murray with their length, with their athleticism on the perimeter defensively, and made things difficult for him in round 2. They did the same to Devin Booker in round 1. Luka Doncic is a completely different type of player. His size and physicality, and obviously his scoring touch, combined with his playmaking ability, one of the best probably 5 or 6 players in the entire NBA. It's a bit of a different challenge, a different type of challenge. And Jamal Murray's great, and Devin Booker's great. Luka's better than both of them, and he's a more physical player. So can the Wolves slow down Luka enough? It's a bit different than, slowing down Nikola Jokic, which to slow him down, it's more make him shoot the ball a bunch, make him shoot difficult shots, wear him down, and then the other guys have to beat you. With Dallas, like, Luka could pretty much single-handedly beat you with the way he plays, and that to me is the biggest thing. Can they withstand the physicality of Luka without getting their guys like Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, without those guys getting into foul trouble? Can they slow down Luka at all?
And the flip side of this is how the Mavericks, who were, I think, quietly a top 10 defense by defensive efficiency this last season, how they attack this Timberwolves offense, which this is a conversation you and I have had on the show, has not always been pretty, this offense, over the course of this season, last season. I was surprised we didn't see Denver go a little bit more to, hey, let's just let Anthony Edwards score, because when he's getting everyone else involved, that's when this offense looks to be at its best. How do you think the Mavericks will defend this Timberwolves offense? Yeah,
I think they'll start by trying to play him straight up with some of their, more athletic, Derek Jones Jr., maybe off the bench, Josh Green a little bit. I think they'll try and play him straight up. I mean, Denver tried it at first with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Aaron Gordon. KCP was too small. Aaron Gordon was he's not slow, but too slow for Ant, because most defenders are. So how are the Mavericks going to do it? I think they try to guard him straight up. And then if they need to load up on him, we've seen Ant, games, or I guess it was game 5 and game 6 in the Nuggets series in the second round. He did have these moments where he wasn't quite processing quick enough, even the first half of game 7, where he wasn't making quick enough decisions. And that's an area where he's grown massively this season, but occasionally he still takes too long to decide what he's going to do with the ball in his hands. and then the defense has time to recover and help, and or he gets stuck in a trap. But yeah, I would expect them to try and guard him straight up and just kind of see what happens, and eventually they may try and load up on him. But Dallas also has some rim protection, and Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively. Like, they've got more athleticism, more size, more depth. They're not a super deep team, but still more depth than Denver, at least in terms of young athletic depth. And so getting to the rim and scoring at the rim won't be as easy, simply because there's the second line of defense. As you said, I mean, Dallas, they are legitimately a top 10 defense basically since March 1st this year, and have been one of the better defensive teams in the playoffs. So it's a different challenge for Minnesota on that end of the floor as well. And, can Ant make quick decisions? Can he make the right decisions? Overall, he's done that in the playoffs more often than not, but you got to hold serve when Luka is scoring on the other end.
The biggest question to me for the Timberwolves is on both ends of the floor, because this is a question that they're going to have to ask on both ends of the floor, is can we play our preferred lineup? Can we stay big? Because it was the ideal team against Denver was being able to play big. You could put Kat on Jokic and have Rudy Gobert as your rover defender. That's going to be a little trickier against the Mavericks. What is your feel for how that's going to play out in this series?
I think I don't think they'll let Dallas play them into a smaller lineup. I mean, the Wolves have sometimes stubbornly just kept Gobert on the floor all the time, and it ends up working out. And Dallas doesn't necessarily play small all that often unless Maxi Kleber is healthy. And if he comes back healthy, which there's not real clear reporting on that, but it sounds like maybe mid-series he comes back. I mean, they'll play small ball with him, and that could be a bigger challenge. I'd be really surprised, not really surprised. I don't think for long stretches they're going to go small with PJ Washington at the 5. If that's the case, that will be a bit of a challenge. And it's different than when Terrence Mann was hitting corner threes and the Clippers, quote unquote, played Rudy Gobert off the floor, which is a misnomer. This Wolves team has perimeter defenders, so Rudy won't necessarily have to guard both the rim and somebody on the perimeter. But if Dallas has 5 guys that can make threes, which is the case if PJ Washington or Maxi Kleber is at the 5, that does make it more challenging. I still think the Wolves will say, hey, look, we'll put him on Lively and we'll take our chances. It's not the same as putting him on Aaron Gordon, because Lively's more athletic. Well, I should say more athletic, but more of a threat offensively than Aaron Gordon. So I think the Wolves they'll play their game. And the beauty of it is, if Rudy does have an awful game or something, or they really feel like they need to make a mid-series adjustment, Cat's a center. Like, he can play the 5, and they've got Naz Reid, so they can also play small if they need to. But I think it's going to take a lot to force the Wolves into adjusting their rotations.
Stay up to date on the Minnesota Timberwolves all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Wolves on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Donovan Mitchell should be on the move this offseason. The Cleveland Cavaliers are at a crossroads this offseason. Darius Garland has said that he wants out if Donovan Mitchell is still going to be there next year. Meanwhile, Mitchell enters a contract year in which he has stated his desires to go to free agency after the contract is up. That's code for go to New York. As Locked On NBA host Nick Anstad and Pat the Designer say, Cleveland should trade Mitchell now.
This is tough for me, because I think that Donovan Mitchell has done an excellent job in his time in Cleveland. But let's be real, it has been at the expense of the careers of Darius Garland, and to me, I think of the career of Evan Mobley. Now, Darius Garland has played much better in his time there than Evan Mobley has by far, but Darius Garland to me is taking kind of that awkward role of, like, I need to operate with the ball in my hands. I would love to run a ton of pick and roll. Evan Mobley kind of thrives when him and Darius Garland are on the floor together without Donovan Mitchell on the floor. And that's kind of where I would say, when you look at this guard pairing, is it working together? Now, it is not bad as the Atlanta Hawks. This is something that is getting a team to the playoffs consistently. Both guys are guys that can be counted on, but I feel like Darius Garland, a lot of times, when you're looking for that other guy opposite Donovan Mitchell, can't really find his rhythm, because D. Mitch has to have the ball in his hands so much for him to be the player that he is, which is, by the way, a really good player. So I guess if you feel like the youth movement, even though Donovan very young, is the way to go, and you want to get something back because you don't want to risk losing him for nothing, moving on might be the best answer.
You can't lose him for nothing. That is the Mavericks did that with Brunson, and it just set them back. A whole year was wasted because they lost Jalen Brunson, basically.
Set them back a year. The Bulls have been to the playoffs 3 times in the last 10 years.
Is that not a long time? Is that not long?
No, you bastard.
Mavs have been to the Western Conference Finals 2 out of the last 3 years. In the middle one, they didn't make anything. Sent them back that far. But to me, if you got
46 games last year, how many games they win last year? You complaining? No, I'm just kidding.
No, they won more than the Bulls did. They
you bastard.
You should see my next counted up question.
Oh.
I would keep Darius Garland though.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would keep him.
If you were just going to choose in a vacuum which of these guys to pick, when Darius Garland says it's him or me, then the answer is him. It's Donovan Mitchell. You'd rather have Donovan Mitchell. The problem is you don't know if you're going to get Donovan Mitchell. You don't know that you'll be able to re-sign Donovan Mitchell. And then if you do, you apparently have to trade Darius Garland, or at least entertain trading Darius Garland. The other part of that is Donovan Mitchell is just probably going to get you more, a bona fide playoff scorer, someone we've seen do it in the big moments. He has more star potential. Teams are going to pay more. So even though Mitchell is more the guy you'd want to build around, we also saw Evan Mobley step up offensively, despite the fact that they lost that playoff series. It's not a great situation for any team to be in, to have to choose between two superstars who are saying, we're not sure we want to be here, whatever the reason. But that means trade the guy with the most value, the guy who is most likely to leave, and that's Donovan Mitchell. And finally, don't you just hate long phone meetings? Well, imagine you're an NFL assistant coach whose team is in the playoffs. You've done a good job this season and you're up for a head coaching job across the country. But these teams want to talk a lot, like 7 or 8 hours in some cases, and on the same day of your playoff game. Well, the NFL is instituting a limit. Teams may now only interview playoff coaches for 3 hours while their team is alive. Some coaches reported interviews that have lasted up to 8 hours this past postseason, and on the same day their teams were supposed to play. How do you balance your career with your team's playoff success? Well, the NFL is trying to make that easier to navigate. There has to be a better way to do this. And if it means no one can interview anyone until after the Super Bowl, maybe that's what we have to do. But something has to change. If you're catching this episode of Locked On Sports Today after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports Today, will the Wolves carry the momentum into Game 1, or can the Mavs steal it? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.